Welcome to another edition of Boundary Systems, or actually PDSVISION. PDSVISION webinar Wednesday. My name is Sebi Beaver, and I'm going to be presenting today on Creo Schematics. Today we're going to be talking about Creo Schematics. I'm mostly going to be talking about this from a beginner's perspective, someone who's very knowledgeable with Creo, but not as knowledgeable with schematics. So I'm going to be talking about what the software does, what it can be used to do, and then I'm going to be jumping into the software. I'm going to be showing an example schematic, and I'm going to show how that can integrate with Creo Parametric. As I mentioned today, I'm going to be going over the functionality of Creo Schematics. I'm going to be talking a little bit about schematics, what it is, what it does, before jumping into a demonstration, where I'm going to give you all a couple quick tips, talk about how to set up a project, talk a little bit about creating a schematic. So I'm not going to go into detail on that, but I'll talk about placing artifacts, connecting them with fibers, etc. And then finally, I'm going to jump into Creo, and we're going to look at how we can actually use that schematics data in our 3D model. So a little bit about me. I've been with PDSVISION for over 4 years. I'm from a mechanical engineering background. I've used CAD for about 10 years and Creo for 4 or 5 now. With PDSVISION, I specialize in Creo design, so intro classes, advanced modeling classes, advanced assembly, drafting, things like that. Simulation. So all Creo's different simulation packages I work with extensively. And I'm getting into some other areas like mechanisms, like piping, cabling, schematics, etc. A little bit about us. Most of you all know us, but we did change our name as of the first of the year, but we are PDSVISION. We are a global PTC partner. We offer licensing, Windchill, remote admin services, cloud hosting, training, consulting, help desk, etc. My timeline's a bit out of date. At the very end of that, I should have name changed to PDSVISION, right at the very end of 2022. But we were founded in 2006. PDSVISION was founded separately in Sweden in 2008. We expanded globally in the mid-2010s, expanded to South Africa. We were acquired by PDSVISION, Swedish company, in early 2018. So the name change was not really a change because we've been under PDSVISION since 2018. And we still pretty much operate completely independently. So nothing's really changed in how we operate, except for our email addresses are now pdsvision.us, not boundarysystems.com. Additionally, besides PTC products, we also work with these products you see here. We find that oftentimes these products will complement Creo. So for that reason, we provide support for these products as well. I'm going to skip this digital thread stuff and jump into talking about schematics. So just a very rough overview of schematics. Schematics is an entirely 2D application, whereas Creo Parametric, as I'm sure you know, is 3D. Others like Illustrator also 2D. Schematics is 2D only. And the purpose of schematics is to create circuits, wiring, or P&ID diagrams for electrical, harness, piping work, and some other applications that generally fall under those two categories of electrical and piping. So that right there is going to be a required part of the process. There are other applications, other competitors that can also do this. However, the big advantage is that if you're already using Creo Parametric, then you're able to integrate this schematic with your actual 3D model. This is done through two extensions in Creo, and that's Creo piping extension and Creo cabling extension. Both of those are going to be able to use schematic data to automate some of the design process in Creo and maintain a link there to the original schematic, thus avoiding errors when departments communicate with each other. The schematic department is often going to be electrical engineers. The CAD department is often going to be mechanical. So by implementing this at your company that already uses Creo on the mechanical side, you're going to see a lot of benefits. So as I mentioned, the benefits are being able to capture electrical and mechanical features in a single model. That right there improves your collaboration between different parts of your company. And lastly, we do speed up the design process in Creo by doing this as well. We can automate the routing of wires as long as we set up our schematic properly. And those wires themselves are going to be created in the schematic. They're going to have properties like minimum bend radius. So it's going to control how they actually behave in 3D. As long as all that is set up properly at the schematic level, we're able to do things like automatically route cables. So we can see an example in the bottom right of our screen there. All of those cable features are going to be automatically created, essentially with the push of a button, as long as this is set up properly in Creo schematics. Okay, so I'm going to jump into schematics here. I think a lot of these concepts are easier showed with the actual software. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is just how schematics files are handled. I'm about to open this schematic electrical control cabinet. Okay. And actually these sheets were closed. They would be closed right from the start. Sorry, I already opened them up, but that's not what you would see when you load this in. All right. So this right here is what you would actually see when you open a schematics file. Essentially, you'll see this folder tree, and these folders can hold multiple sheets. So in this top folder, or I guess it's a subfolder of design really, but this first subfolder, circuit diagrams, this is going to contain two different sheets. The second one, wiring diagrams, contains one sheet. So this one schematic file actually contains three different sheets. We can choose which ones of these we want to open at any time. They're going to open, and it's going to look a lot like opening different drawings. But just wanted to make the point that all of these are grouped under our top level design. They're all saved into the same file. And that can kind of differ from drawings where you might have multiple drawings. All right, so this is essentially one circuit diagram that continues over two sheets. We'll notice that these fibers that we have routed here continue. And there's a location marker right here that indicates they continue to these locations, or these grid locations on this other sheet. Each of these elements can be selected, and we can right click and look at their properties. So this fiber right here, that's the terminology for something that connects these blocks or ports together. So that would be things like wires or pipes. They would all be grouped as fibers here. And this fiber comes with 4 properties or parameters right here. We can see the sheets that this fiber is on. So this is placed on CD1 and CD2. We can see what layer it's on, its full name, description, etc. If we go to this other tab, we can actually see how it appears visually, the line type, the line width, things like that. We can see how the label is set up. This label is placed right in the middle of the fiber, as we can see there. And it's set to show the name parameter of the fiber. So looking back here, the name parameter, or rather the name is KO2. So it's going to show KO2 in this label. So all these other different features are going to work similarly. I mentioned that things that connect blocks together are going to be called fibers. So that means that these are going to be called blocks. These blocks have their own set of properties. And additionally, blocks are going to contain ports. Ports are essentially the point on the block that the fiber is going to attach to. The way I can look at our ports is I can right click this and go to select member. And we'll see that there are 4 different ports I can select. Once I have one of those selected, I can again right click and I'll notice that this port has its own set of properties here. All right, so I'm gonna just quickly jump over to Creo Parametric. All right, so we can see that we have a assembly loaded up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my applications tab. As I mentioned, schematics, which is actually a separate program down here, Creo Schematics. It's not going to be under Creo Parametric or the Creo Parametric umbrella. So in Creo, in order to essentially connect or integrate with schematics, I'm going to be doing that with the cabling and piping extensions. Those can be found in the Applications tab. Now, something I have not mentioned is licensing. So I'm going to talk really briefly about that. There are a lot of people who over the last couple years have gained access to this software. And that's because this bundle of schematics, piping, cabling is now included with Creo Design Essentials. So if your company uses Creo Design Essentials subscription licenses, which I think is like a mid-tier package, but it's I think the most common package, then you may have access to these, schematics, piping, cabling, and that applies to a lot of people, at least as of the last few years. So if you don't see these specific extensions, you may not be licensed to use them. Another reason you might not see piping and cabling in Creo Applications tab, you're only going to be able to see these when you open up an assembly. If you just have a part open, then that's not really going to be able to properly integrate with piping cabling. So you're not going to see these piping cabling options if you just have a part file open. There are other reasons that you might not see these if you are licensed, so just reach out to us if that's the case and we'll help you get set up. Okay, so just jumping into this this assembly that we have set up in cabling, we'll notice that we have a new cabling tab and all the new cabling stuff is going to be under this new cabling tab. So I'm going to be looking at how to auto route cables from a schematic a little bit later, but these are actually already routed. I can't enable thick cables, so I can see their actual size. I can switch between that and them being represented by just a single line. And I can also turn on labels. So each of these components, I just want to point out essentially that what we're seeing here is the circuit that we were just looking at in that schematic. So we'll notice these three different lamps, L1, L2, and L3. And those three lamps, L3 has 2 connections, L1 has 1 connection, LO2 has I think 2 connections there going into the same port. These are connected to various other elements in this circuit. And I'm going to jump back to schematics. I'm going to open the wiring diagram. And we'll notice this is indeed the same thing. So we have LO1, LO2, LO3. LO1 has the 1 fiber. LO2 has the 2 going into the same port. LO3 has the 2 going into different ports. So essentially what we're seeing here is the same thing as what we're seeing here. Okay. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about a little bit more about schematics, specifically about how to place these artifacts, how to actually create a schematic. And to do that, I'm going to have to talk a little bit about the catalog. So I'm going to go ahead and open up what we call a catalog explorer. This is going to contain all of these different elements that I'm able to place into a schematic sheet. So it's going to have blocks, it's going to have fibers, it's going to have ports. If I click this drop down, we'll also see we can have highways. So that's paths that fibers can run along. We have groups, which can be groups of blocks or groups of fibers. We also have design templates and catalog templates. Those are going to be things like sheet templates, or these are going to be things like predefined folder trees here. So we can store a lot of things in these catalogs that range from templates to groups to ports. Oftentimes, if you work at a big company, you'll be using a central catalog. So there'll be one person somewhere that manages the catalog of all of these different elements, and you're just going to connect into that catalog. So we can see here I have a whole bunch of folders. This is just the block section. So I have different types of blocks. I have control modules. I have different types of relays. I have a couple different types of switches. Etc. Now, if you're just getting started and you don't have all of this set up, there's 2 things you can do. Thing number 1 is you can go to Get Started tab and select Sample Catalog. And that's going to create a blank new schematic here. And this is going to come with a catalog already set up for you with just a whole bunch of sample items that you're able to use, kind of industry standard type things. So we can see that there's a whole lot of stuff, a lot more than was in that other catalog we had set up in this sample catalog. The way to find this is, again, a little bit weird. You actually have to go to Get Started and Sample Catalog, and that will create a new schematic using the sample catalog. But this will give you access to at least some catalog items here that you can use to get. Okay, just 1 second. Sorry about the delay. I'm just going to have to open up new file here. Okay, so now I'm going to do just a brief example of how we're going to use this schematic data. And and actually use that in Creo Parametric to automatically route our wires. So this is a pretty basic example. So we're gonna see how this works, but you're gonna be able to imagine how much the time saving is gonna be if instead of 4 wires, we have hundreds. So clearly, it's gonna be more and more effective, more and more of a time save the larger scale you work with. So one thing that I want to point out here, or a couple things that I want to point out here, things that are required to actually get this to work. Specifically, there are certain required parameters that each of these things must have. And there are also certain things that you must keep in mind in Creo Parametric when you create your model in order for it to work properly. So the first thing I want to talk about, I'm going to do a select member to select these ports. So I'm going to go ahead and grab C2. Go ahead and look at the properties. So for ports specifically, the really important one here is going to be entry underscore ports. So what this is going to do is it is going to look for a coordinate system in Creo Parametric that is named entry underscore 2. And it is going to use the Z axis of that coordinate system to route this wire. So essentially how Creo does this, how it's able to do this automatic routing from schematics, is it will take a look at that parameter entry port for each of these ports. And then it's going to look for a coordinate system in Creo called entry underscore 2. And it's going to say, okay, that coordinate system is this port. That's how it's going to actually identify where these fibers are supposed to go in Creo Parametric. So in addition to setting this entry underscore port parameter here, you're going to have to make sure to create a coordinate system in Creo that corresponds with where you want this wire to come out of. And you need to call that coordinate system entry underscore 2. Similarly with this block that we have here, there are several parameters that we're going to want that are going to be necessary to set this up. A lot of them are going to be set automatically for you in the default catalog, but the really important one to point out is this model name. So this is going to correspond with the specific part in Creo. So essentially we're saying this block is going to be this red underscore lamp underscore connector part in Creo. And the port is going to be whatever entry underscore 2, which is going to be a coordinate system on that part. Okay, now I'm going to jump back to Creo. And again, I'm going to open a new part. So I'm going to open the assembly that's it's going to be associated with this schematic. Actually, I'm sorry, I skipped a step. I skipped the export. So once we're to this point, once we're all set up, we want to export this to Creo. We're just going to do file export. I'm going to do export to XML for this example. For target application, I'm going to select cabling. For the name, I'm going to type electrical layout. And I can click this file selector and browse to where I want to put this. So I guess it didn't save my working directory. So whatever, it doesn't really matter where I put it. I'm going to export the entire design. Actually, I can do current sheet. That's fine. The rest of that looks good. I'm going to click validate XML. None of the wordings there are critical, so I'll click OK. So we'll now see export to XML completes. All right, so now we're going to jump back to Creo Parametric. And this time I'm going to open a different assembly that is, that again, we're going to connect to this schematic here through an import. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually check this this tree filters really quick. Let me see. We're just going to hide datum planes. There we go. And I'm also going to add a tree column. I'm going to use this column to show some cable info that we're going to look at later, we're going to reference later. Okay, so I just added this designation column from our cable info category here. And now that's going to show as a column in the model tree. Okay. Now, going to jump into cabling. There we go. And I'm actually going to remove a couple of these other columns just to make this a little bit more organized. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to import the XML from schematics. So I'm going to go ahead and click import here. It's going to open up a menu manager. This is just one of the few places that still uses menu manager in Creo. Hopefully they get rid of it soon. So I'm going to go ahead and just import this XML. And done. We'll see that XML file has been read. I guess we missed it. But if I drag this up, there we go. XML file has been read successfully. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to auto designate. So all of this logical data, this group over here, is essentially using info from schematics. We'll see that this auto designation, it worked. It did it. So it's recognizing essentially this cabling feature from schematics, the reference model. So that's going to be the model name that it's looking for. And we see that it says auto match. So this did identify each of these components with the schematic. Everything's looking good. Okay. Now we'll notice this designation column that I set up is now showing that these three components here have been designated or paired essentially with something in the schematic. So we see CM01, LO1, SO1. Going back to the schematic, we see those three blocks right here. Of course, we haven't set up the fibers yet. That's what we're about to do. We'll also notice these tags are showing that designation as well. So at this point, we can either automatically route wires, or we can essentially automate that process. Manually routing fibers, that would just be normal cabling. If you're interested in how to do that, I would definitely recommend checking out any of our cabling content. I'm sure we have several webinars on our YouTube channel, which is PDSVISION. I'll show that a little bit later, but I would check out some cabling content if you're interested in that. So for our purposes, we are going to create some spools here. So we're going to create from logical, and we will see that we have these 3 different spools that are being imported from the schematic. So I'm going to select all, done selection, and done. We'll see that those spools are now created here in cabling in parametric. Okay. Now I'm going to just show the layer tree really quick. And looking for the network layer. Here it is. I'm going to go ahead and show this. Let's see. Why am I not able to see this? Sorry, just 1 second. Not seeing what I expect here. There it is. Okay, great. So this is a cable network that was previously created. These essentially provide paths that cables are going to take when we auto route them. So it's going to follow the specific parameters of the fiber from the schematic. So if I open up properties here, this has things like thickness, minimum bend radius, etc., that are going to apply to this fiber. So jumping back to here, essentially this is going to be routed between coordinate system 1 and coordinate system 2, which are paired from the ports in schematics. And it is going to follow the minimum bend radius while following these this signal network. Okay. So jumping back to the model tree, we are now going to route cables. Okay, so we are going to click retrieve from logical references. Again, these we've already imported from schematics. We're going to see that these 3 different wires were found. So I'm just going to add those all over here to our parametric file. Okay. And we will notice they are automatically routed. And when I click apply, these are actually going to be created with their thickness that was assigned to them in schematics. Okay. So that brings me to the end of my demo. Couple of last things to finish up before I open it up to questions. If you have any interest in training, we are in full swing, virtual and in person, with our training. We have a whole bunch of classes, including Intro to Creo Schematics. Feel free to check those out. If you have any further questions for me, my email is up on the screen here. Or of course, I'm just gonna open it up to questions in a second. You can use the questions section of GoToMeeting. Any sales stuff, reach out to the sales email address there. And I just want to mention at the bottom, it says visit Boundary Systems on YouTube. That has officially changed as of like the last couple weeks. We are now PDSVISION on YouTube, or at least as far as I know. When I checked a couple weeks ago, we were now PDSVISION. So definitely check us out on YouTube. You'll probably find our videos online one way or the other just by doing Google searches eventually. But feel free to check us out. I'm sure we have more schematics content on there, more cabling, piping content as well. So I think that is all I got. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. Very off topic, but I noticed some G&W people are on here. Ken, I'm talking to Sean about your issue specifically. He's with a customer until Friday, but I'll get back to you on that shortly. A little off topic because it is schematics related, but yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and open it up to questions. So feel free to ask questions in the question section. All right, so I got one question. Is auto routing cables the same as auto routing wires that I showed? So yes, it should be. So I can route when I route cables here and do this find, it's going to find cables and wires, and it should pull both of those in depending on how that was used at the schematic. Cables will be recognized there as well. Yes. Now in the schematic, there's two different ways to create cables. We're not really getting into that. I don't think I'm really going to get into that now. But essentially, you can create. Oops. You can create cables as groups right from the start, or you can automatically select specific fibers when you're actually placing them to create a group of wires or a group of fibers, which becomes a cable. So that wasn't set up in this example. However, yes, when you go into Creo over here, if there is a cable used, it should be picking that up. It should recognize the cable, and it should be importing that cable in the same way it would a wire. I know, Ken, specifically about your issue that we've looked at, where this is not working properly, and hoping to talk to Sean about that. Or I will talk to Sean about that on Friday and see what he has to say. But yeah, the best answer I have right now is that yes, that should bring in cables, that that should work properly, and it should work in the same. Okay, I think that's all we have in the way of questions, at least so far. If you have any additional questions, you can enter them in GoTo, and if you just didn't get it in yet, I will get that and I'll be able to reply via email. Otherwise, feel free to just reach out to me. My email is right here. And I think that is it. So thank you everybody so much for attending this week's PDSVISION webinar Wednesday. Please check us out on YouTube at PDSVISION. And I hope you all have a great rest of the week. Thanks so much.